Section 1. You will hear a conversation between two people about off-campus university excursions. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What can I do for you?
Yes, I understand the university offers, organized trips to...
Correct. We have about 3 trips per month on both weekdays and weekends.
There are 3 trips per month, so that has been written in the notes. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What can I do for you?
Yes, I understand the university offers, organized trips to...
Correct. We have about 3 trips per month on both weekdays and weekends.
I see. Can I ask what kind of places do you go to?
Certainly. Well, usually there are excursions to the city. There are many interesting cultural venues to see, such as theatres and art museums. We also organise trips to the local mountains for hiking, or sometimes even to discount shopping areas around here. We don't organise guided tours, since most students like to explore on their own.
How far away are they usually?
Well, it's a good thing the city is not too far south of here, since most of the excursions we organise go there. They are never more than 2 hours away.
And so how much do I have to pay for each excursion?
Oh, the great thing is that the transportation is free. You pay for just entrance fees and the like, or for whatever you buy.
That sounds great.
Yes, and for certain events, like theatre shows, you can get a discount on tickets when you buy them through the school.
Oh, really? So how do I buy discounted tickets?
When we travel to the venue, you will be given a discount at the box office or the ticket booth if you show your school identification card. You can also purchase tickets beforehand for you and your friends from the university website at the discounted price.
All right. What part of the website is it?
Well, log on to the university website with your ID number.
Right. The login screen on the main page.
There will be a section called Campus Activities on the navigation bar on the left side. In that section, there is another link for off-campus excursions. The monthly schedule is shown there, and there is also an online form to purchase any discount tickets available.
Nice. Thanks for the advice.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
So yeah, my computer is down. Can I ask you what excursions there are this month?
Yeah, it's the beginning of the school year, so the new schedule isn't up on the website yet. But I have the schedule here on my computer. We have all the dates confirmed, and when the site is updated, you'll be able to buy discount tickets from there.
Thanks. I am pretty busy during the week, so maybe you could just tell me about some of the next few ones coming up on the weekends.
Definitely. The weekend before October break, there is a bus going to Big River Valley Park. That's the 12th. This is a hiking trip to see fall foliage, so there will be a small entrance fee of $11 to enter the park. It's a 6-hour excursion.
Oh, wonderful. The fall colors are so gorgeous that time of year.
The week after October break, there is a bus going to Woodbury Grove. That's the 26th of October. It has a lot of outlet stores. It's very popular at this time of the year because students like to buy things for their dormitory rooms.
What's an outlet store?
An outlet store is a kind of discount store.
Could you spell that?
Outlet. Outlet.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, that bus leaves at 11 p.m. and comes back at 6 p.m.
All right, got it.
The next weekend, on Sunday, there is a trip going down to the city. So yes, on the 3rd of November, students can visit the Museum of Contemporary Art. They have a new exhibition showing modern Chinese art.
That sounds really interesting. How much is it?
The school has a special arrangement with the museum, so it's free with your student ID.
I'll definitely go to that one. When will the bus be leaving?
It leaves from Lauder Hall at 12 p.m. and gets back around 9 p.m., so it will be 9 hours.
Wow, thanks for all the info.
No problem. If you have any other questions about the off-campus excursions, feel free to email me.
Okay, here, I have a pen. What is it?
It's paladin@mail.com.
Could you spell that?
Paladin, Paladin @mail.com.
Thanks again.
It's my pleasure. Don't worry about it.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Test 1. Listening. Section 2. You will hear an extract from a radio program for people who live abroad. Listen and answer questions 11 to 17. Program for people who live abroad. Listen and answer questions 11 to 17.
You're listening to Expat News, a weekly broadcast for the English-speaking community in this great city. In today's programme, we'll be hearing from Tom O'Hara, who's going to tell us about all those different associations you can join. Tom.
Good evening. Yes, in a city with so many of its residents born outside the country, it's hardly surprising there's such a huge range of expatriate clubs and societies. And many of these, of course, are aimed at English speakers. So, first and perhaps most obviously, we have the sports clubs, which in some cases field teams in things like rugby and tennis that compete against clubs in other parts of the country or even abroad. You don't have to play at this level to have fun, though. They can be just a great way to do some exercise. And, of course, to get to know other people, especially if you're new in town. The same can be said of the many hobby and interest clubs that have sprung up here. Everything from landscape photography, such as the Viewfinders Club in the Harbour District, or Focus on the Airport Road, to old favourites like stamp collecting. Remember that this country has a long tradition of unusual and perhaps even eccentric societies, so there should be something for everyone. A place where you can meet people of different nationalities with the same social and/or cultural interests as you. For those who may be interested in rather more than just friendship, there's a wide range of lively social clubs. Several singles associations organise dancing of various kinds, while for people in a real hurry, there's speed dating, in which everyone talks to everyone else for just 5 minutes. Then, at the end, they decide which of them they would like to meet again by ticking their names on a list. In complete contrast to these are the many religious associations, reflecting the diversity of faith groups present in this multicultural city. Many of them, of course, have their own places of worship. Perhaps also of interest to those who've come here from other parts of the world are the international and cultural societies. These often provide a meeting place for people from a specific country, China, for instance, and particular ethnic groups, such as Afro-Caribbeans. As in other major cities, we have here local branches of many charities with names familiar around the world. Meetings of human rights organisations like Amnesty International are held regularly in English, as are those of environmental groups such as Greenpeace. All funds raised, by the way, go to the same kinds of good cause as they do in other countries you may have lived in. Inevitably, perhaps, there are also the political clubs, often connected with a particular party and, indeed, a particular country. So we have, for example, a local association of Republicans linked to and campaigning for that party in the US, and Liberal Democrats here doing the same for their party in Britain. Finally, on a lighter note, there's plenty to choose from in the performing arts. Whether you enjoy taking part or just watching and listening, you can take your pick from a whole range of groups. To take just a couple of examples, there's light opera at the Memorial Hall in the city centre, or a very lively amateur theatre company in the Park District. In summer, they give open-air performances of Shakespeare plays, free of charge.
Test 1. Listening. Section 2. Now answer questions 18 to 20.
I should mention at this point that clearly some districts have a higher concentration of English-speaking clubs than others, and that certain parts of town tend to specialise in particular activities. An obvious example would be the number of water sports clubs down near the river. Whatever the number, though, they usually have one thing in common. With the exception of a few associations linked to particular countries and supported by their embassies here, in the vast majority of cases, it is the individual members who fund them, so an entry fee or a subscription will be charged. You may be used to council-subsidised sports centres and the like in your home country, but I'm afraid that's not the case here. Assuming you can afford it then, you can be fairly sure that somewhere out there you'll find a club that caters for your own particular fascination. If it's very important to you and you intend to spend a lot of time on it, it might even determine which district of the city you decide to live in. In the unlikely event that you really can't find such a club, the solution is to try to persuade friends and anyone else you meet of the need for one. You could also use the local small ads on the internet to suggest the idea. You'll be amazed at just how many people share even the strangest interest. Then you can start your own.
That is the end of Section 2.
Section 3. You will hear two students, Frank and Nicole, discussing their survey results. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
OK, Nicole. Did you interview the required 50 people?
Yes, I have them all here. I had intended to talk to over 50 actually, but I could only talk to 46 in the end, all students from the university. It should be fine for our purposes, and it was interesting actually to hear what they said.
I was hoping for 50 to make a round number. Better for statistical purposes, but 46 should be OK.
I think so. What was interesting was that many of them were not happy with the staff here.
Really? What proportion?
Well, 1/4 of them said the staff were OK, and another 10% said they were good, which together makes about 1/3. So basically the rest of the people I interviewed weren't happy in this respect.
So, what was the main cause of complaint?
Well, it's rather mixed. A lot of the foreign students complained about the homestay accommodation and the attitude of the homestay officers when dealing with these issues. Most of the foreign students said this actually, but the bulk of the mainstream students had concerns with the attitude of the teachers. It seems they feel the teachers don't care enough, and facilities weren't that important, relatively speaking.
I think the teachers here are okay. Don't you think so, Nicole?
Personally, I'd say most of them are fine. But obviously there are a few I'd say need to improve in their commitment to helping students.
Oh, not many though. Only about 10% maybe.
More, I'd say, at least 1/3.
Wow, Nicole, that's a bit harsh. That many? I'd say 90% of the teachers here are fine.
I think I definitely disagree there.
Well, whatever the case, the university seems to have some problems. Who should we inform about these findings?
The course convener. He runs our programme.
Yeah, just a small programme. These problems are serious and university-wide. I think we should talk to the assistant dean at least.
Come on, we're just a couple of students. We can't go that high. It's like some cleaners wanting to talk to the CEO. We've got to follow the chain of command and start at the bottom.
OK, the course convener it is.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So, Nicole, can you explain the technique you used for interviewing people? Every time I try interviewing, I seem to encounter problems, and yet you managed to interview so many people so quickly. What's the secret?
It's really quite simple. Let me explain it all. The first step, and this is probably the most important point, is to select the position or the location where you're going to do the interviewing. It's got to be a good one. For me, it was the university cafeteria at lunchtime, where people would be relaxed, have time, be sitting down, and be more willing to speak.
Ah, clever.
But that leads to the next point. Everyone's in a hurry these days, so you've got to immediately confirm that they can in fact spare some moments to answer your questions. There's no point starting and then having them rush off in the middle of the interview. It just ruins everything.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times actually.
And then it's equally important to carefully outline why you want to talk to them in the first place. Some people might think you're a salesman or a busybody or some nutcase from a religious cult. They have to know the purpose and trust you. Now, part of that trust involves guaranteeing that the information will be kept in total confidence. And for that reason, I show how we don't take down names or any personal data. After that, you're ready to begin, but sometimes they're not won over or not ready to give you the time, in which case you remind them about how their information can actually improve life for all students, and that they are actually serving the purposes of everyone by cooperating.
Right. Make it seem like a noble cause.
It is in a way, but the last step is not so noble at all. I just offer them a payback, usually a scratchy lottery ticket, if they promise to answer all the questions. Everyone dreams of scratching one of those tickets and winning $1 million, so that makes them do everything you want.
Aha, very clever.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer discussing human resource management. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
Obviously, the people who work in companies need to be managed. Pay must be added up, hours clocked, and leave tallied. This is known as hard human resource management, or hard HRM. This is because it is based on hard numbers, facts and rules. That is, an impersonal, calculative aspect. And again, there must be such an outlook, with all its paper-based systems, in order to carry out company tasks. But if there's a hard, there must be a soft. And it is this soft element of HRM that I'd like to consider now. Historically, it took a long while before the importance of this soft element was realized. Originally, for example, in Henry Ford's car-making factories, workers were regarded as unthinking tools who would mindlessly repeat the same task for 8 hours a day. This attitude worked for a while. However, the Ford Motor Company faced the growing challenges of huge turnover, lack of motivation, declining quality of their product, and labor disputes. It eventually became clear that the original ethos about workers was wrong. It needed to take their human needs more into account. That leads us to the modern soft HRM model, where the staff, or human resources, are now considered one of the most important assets a company may have, an asset just as tangible as the factories, shops, and money in the bank, and something that needs to be managed in a soft way as well as hard.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
So, what is soft HRM? It basically involves 3 elements. One is motivating your staff. The second is making sure they stay with your company, that is, reducing turnover. And remember, turnover costs money, diverts resources, disturbs the system, and you may be losing a lot of experience there in just one staff member. The third element is using the staff in the best way, in a way that gets the most out of them. All of these elements are closely related and sometimes overlap, but are still distinct enough to be considered separately. Now, let's talk about motivation first. Obviously, people will work harder if they feel good about being where they are. This means the company should let people know that they are significant, and you do that by emphasizing the higher purpose their job serves in society as a whole. And this sense of higher purpose will drive people onwards. So, for example, if the company makes paper, have a motivation session, letting them all understand the importance of paper to modern society, and it is important. Basically, everything is important when you think about it, so make this fact clear to all. As for keeping staff, well, that also comes from motivation. But do you know the number one reason why people leave jobs? The answer? Because they don't feel appreciated. So, you need to make sure that they have this feeling. How? At its simplest, the boss can say thank you to the staff. You can remember their birthdays, bring out a cake, celebrate milestones, take them to a restaurant once in a while, and say thank you again. But more importantly, mean it sincerely. If this is going to work, sincerity is very important here. Well, we've motivated the staff, and retained them with the company, so now we've got to use them optimally. This is often done by getting them to participate more in the key decisions. This has two advantages. One, the employees feel more in control of their destinies, helping again with motivation and retention. And two, the company tends to make better decisions. Remember, often it is the people closest to the customer who can really tell you the very best things about what works and what doesn't. The modern organization realizes that insight, knowledge, and clever innovation can come from anyone in the company, no matter how close or far from the decision-making process they may be.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.